cases a week by Christmas. And now you can see here that the Independent is talking about a fresh nightmare for the land of Ebola, hot on the heels of the spreading plague. Famine is now approaching West Africa. Now, fields are without farmers, fields are going unreaped, and the Independent tells us that all this is making food prices spiral out of control. A lot of people are going hungry, and the UN warns that 750,000 people could actually die of famine. Now, that's one consequence of the Ebola outbreak. Front Page Africa, that's a Liberian paper. They focus on another consequence that could also have very negative consequences in the long term, and that is the fact that governments in Liberia has had to put a lid on the country's education sector. So you can see the article talks about school in the time of Ebola. Well, it says that many children are trapped in their homes and having to teach themselves, and this, well, in the long term, will have very, very deep consequences.
Local authorities, of course, are also swamped with trying to stop the virus from spreading flow.
That's right. And The Independent, let's go back to that paper, they talk about the fact that there is a hopeless shortage of medical supplies in key areas. Now, what you're looking at here is an interesting graphic that explains the situation in Liberia and shows what it currently has to fight Ebola and what it's projected to need over the next 6 months. And the situation is really tragic. For instance, Liberian health authorities currently have about 4,900 large body bags available, but they're going to need an estimated 84,800 such bags over the next 6 months. So 17 times the number that they have right now. And there's a similar shortage for everything from chlorine powder to plastic gloves and face masks and boots. Everything is, there's not enough of anything.
An idea also their flow of how things are expected to get so much worse than already they are. The international community being very much criticized at the moment for having done far too little, far too late.
That's right. The Wall Street Journal has very harsh words for the World Health Organization and the American Center for Disease Control and Prevention. They are failing in their core health mission, says the Wall Street Journal in their editorial today. This tragedy that we're seeing is ruthlessly exposing the decay of these once eminent public institutions that were established to contain such a virus from spreading. And the Wall Street Journal says that these institutions should be defunded to discipline their ineptitude. So very harsh words there.
Now, a lot of alarm also in the American media today flow, this after the infection of a second nurse in Dallas with the virus.
That's right. Now, President Barack Obama is trying to play down the threat of a massive outbreak of Ebola in the U.S. You can read in the New York Times that yesterday he raised the possibility of appointing an Ebola czar to oversee and manage the government's response to the virus. Now, there is a lot of anxiety in the U.S. media over that second nurse who caught Ebola, especially the fact that she took a commercial airplane, even though she was showing symptoms of Ebola, and especially because she had called the CDC to make sure she could take the plane. They had told her that she was allowed to take the plane, basically. Schools have been shut in several states. Hospitals and airlines are keeping their staff home. Lots of papers are wondering, how worried should we actually be? I pulled out a cartoon from the Washington Post, which reminds us of that famous Franklin D. Roosevelt quote from the Great Depression. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. But you can see another guy there saying that's why we're so afraid. And you can see that indeed fear has really taken over the whole of the United States.
Indeed, there is a growing feeling of paranoia among the general public. Something which can have pretty dark consequences, Florence.
That's right. There's an interesting article in Slate today about Syracuse University in the state of New York. It's disinvited a Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer named Michael DeSille from a journalism workshop. Why is that? Well, he recently returned from covering the Ebola crisis in Liberia. Now, Slate says that the Washington Post photographer arrived back in the U.S. 3 weeks ago and has shown no symptoms of the virus. Remember, the incubation period is 21 days, so after those 21 days, he doesn't show any symptoms. Now, Slate says the decision by Syracuse University looks even more hysterical because yesterday he was spent all afternoon taking pictures of the director of the CDC at the Capitol. So certainly he doesn't have any risk if he was taking a photo of Thomas Frieden. Now, yesterday we were reporting about Ebola racism in another university, this time in Texas, which is rejecting international students coming from countries with cases of Ebola. So Slate says you would have hoped more from these institutions of higher learning, but perhaps we should have known better.
Florence Villamino with a look there at the world press this morning. Thank you very much indeed. 26 minutes past 9 here in Paris. We're going to take a quick break for a few minutes, and I'll be back in just a moment with all the very latest headlines. Do stay with us.